following Minnesota's incredibly successful January 23rd general strike, where it was no work, no school, no shopping, and tens of thousands. I think the latest report I saw from folks in Minnesota was that almost 50,000 people were out marching in the street on a day that was minus 20 degrees Fahrenheit. Hugely successful event. And then the next morning, in a retaliatory move, a Customs and Border Patrol agent, a group of them, pistol whipped and shot to death nurse Alex Preddy in the streets of Minneapolis for doing nothing wrong. He was doing absolutely nothing wrong. I'll talk about that more in another video. I think everybody's talking about it. We all know Alex did nothing wrong. So in response to all of that, we're seeing more and more people call for an expansion of the general strike, even before Alex was murdered. We had people saying, wow, what happened in Minnesota? Great. That was really fantastic show of solidarity. This is how we need to be moving. We need to be leveling up actions like this. We saw other states say, hey, we want to expand this. People in Minnesota saying, let's do this for longer, right? And I had a lot of people in my comments who were frustrated, right? Saying, what do you mean a one-day strike? That's not gonna do anything. They need to call out of work. They need to call out of school. They need to have a total economic blackout for as long as is required until ICE gets their asses out of Minnesota. And I was like, no, you guys, no. Appreciate that. ICE needs to get their asses out of Minnesota, right? But we have to crawl before we can walk, and we have to walk before we can run. There has not been a general strike in the United States for 80 years before January 23rd. And so, yeah, there have been other individual labor strikes or boycotts or work stoppages, what have you, but there have not been calls for a general strike, especially not ones that were just like had massive public support the way that Minnesota did, right? For 80 years. And that's that's entirely because sorry, I had to sneeze. That's entirely because of Republicans. Because Republicans, big business, billionaires, the oligarchy have all been working for decades to erode the labor movement, erode protections for workers, workers' rights, workers' pay, workers' safety. They've been infiltrating unions for decades. You think it's a coincidence that Teamsters in the Rust Belt didn't endorse Kamala Harris and that a bunch of Teamsters voted for Donald Trump? That's because Republicans have been undermining the labor movement. I know, maybe you and me, it like blows our minds that any union worker could ever vote for Donald Trump. But guess what? Nurses, teachers, union folks around the country, an awful lot of them didn't understand that they were voting for their own oppression. I get why you would think a billionaire was going to be a friend to workers when billionaires have spent so ridiculous, obscene quantities of money to undermine workers' rights and undermine the power of the unions across this country. Workers' rights, workers' safety, good pay, good quality of life, safe working conditions, access to things like a pension and vacation days and sick days. Those are all a threat to the quarterly profits of big corporations. They're a threat to the dividends of these super rich shareholders. They don't see you and I as human beings. Billionaires, corporate executives, they don't see us as people. They see us as something that cuts into their bottom line. We either make money for them or we cut into their bottom line. And because we have decades and decades of Republicans and the billionaires eroding the labor movement in this country and putting laws all over the place that make it very difficult for us to carry off strikes, we have to once again relearn how to do that. You know what it reminds me of? It reminds me of, I gotta take it back to roller derby. Okay, I've broken both of my legs skating. And it reminds me of when I broke my first leg really, really badly. I was off skates for like 4 months. And I had a bunch of hardware in my leg when I came back. I had a bunch of nerve damage. I had lost all of my muscle mass. And like I knew how to roller skate. I knew how to referee. I had to relearn. I had to relearn so much. I had to rebuild those muscles in particular, right? Like some of the muscle memory was there, but the corresponding muscles were all atrophied. And I think about what we're going through right now, this period of muscle building, relearning some of the skills and also learning how to work in our new bodies that are a little bit different, rebuilding those muscles so that we can flex them more effectively. When I came back from breaking my leg, I literally started out just, and then I built up the confidence to do some crossovers again, right? Inch by inch, I built up my confidence, and at the same time, I built back my muscles. I didn't, the first day I was back on skates, be like, oh yeah, let's throw out that power slide. I was like, no, I'm gonna go to Oaks Park and I'm gonna tootle around the rink, right? I'm gonna see if I can still do a turnaround toe stop and my body will cooperate with me. That's what January 23rd was. That was the like, okay, we're getting back to the rink for the first time, and we're just gonna really gently, roll around for a little bit. And I'm not diminishing the tremendous effort that was made on January 23rd. What I'm saying is we've got to ease ourselves back in, right? We did the crawl, now we're going to stand up and walk. I absolutely think we do need to be having more general strikes. We need to be expanding them. A few days here, a few days there, spread them to more states. One day nationwide general strikes, yes, absolutely. Those are movement building, muscle building activities. They, in and of themselves, are not going to get ICE to leave. They're not going to topple Donald Trump, but they are the buildup to get us to a place where we can pull those levers. We can do the heavy, sustained lifting of nationwide labor stoppages or massive general strikes. Maybe not nationwide, but like over certain targeted sectors at certain targeted parts of the economy, right? We're not there yet, though. And I've been calling for a general strike since February of last year, being like, if all the nurses walked off the job, if all the teachers walked off the job, this shit would be over, right? If we shut down schools across the country, it would be Jober, right? Donald Trump would be done, right? Oh my God, I sound like my Gen Alpha kid. Okay. But we're not there yet. And I actually was listening to a creator that I found a few days ago. He actually just came up in my suggested videos. His account is called Former Black Panther Speaks, Can America Be Saved? I also have had an awful lot of people over the last 3 days recommending his videos to me. So while I don't know this gentleman and he doesn't know me, I have found his videos very educational so far. In his latest video, he said most movements move before they are large enough to be protected. He said you have to build a framework for change before you can enact change. And as I was watching him explaining that reality, I was like, oh, this is exactly what I've been saying about general strikes. We have not built out the framework. We've not had the bake sales, so we can't have the boycott yet. As much as we all really want to have big labor stoppages, as much as we want really big sustained general strikes, right? Because a truly effective general strike that's going to stop the regime, or that's going to put pressure on corporations so that they are no longer compliant with the regime and the regime cannot stay upright and functional, it will topple. Those strikes require a specific demand, sufficient participation by massive numbers of people, for the people to participate in the strike as long as is required for the demands to be met. And then when the organizers say we got to call off the strike, the people need to participate in calling off the strike, right? You return to work, you return to school, you return to participating in the economy. We don't have the numbers yet, y'all, and we don't have the framework built out. We don't have strike funds built out. What's going to happen if you are not a union worker, but you want people in your community to participate in a big strike? How are they going to get their rent paid? How are they going to afford groceries? Are you prepared? Are you prepared to help pay their rent? Are you prepared to help watch their children while schools are closed and they are out on a picket line? How's that going to work? What are the logistics, and how do we make sure that we set ourselves up for success? Because if we just call for a general strike, and again, I've seen elected officials calling for them, I've seen celebrities calling for them. Cool, bro, what are you doing to build a strike fund? How's that going? Not to quote They Might Be Giants here, but you can shake your tiny fist and swear you weren't wrong all day long. But if you call for a general strike and you haven't laid that framework, it's going to fail. It's going to fail as much as you want it to succeed. And we need to succeed. We have got to succeed here. So yeah, big labor stoppages, if those are the things that we need to be doing. No school, no work, no shopping. Cool. If that's what we need to be doing and we have to engage, be prepared. Like look at the Polish solidarity strikes. These general strikes can go on for months and months and months. I mean, I don't think the American economy can withstand that, considering how much Trump has wrecked the economy, and it's basically held together by an AI bubble and some toothpicks. But as former Black Panther said, scale matters. Massive numbers are protective. Making sure that you have well-laid strategic plans, that you're patient, and you lay the foundations that are required. Being impatient, moving impulsively when you're not ready, when you don't have the scale of buy-in and support, and you haven't built out the systems, you don't have the logistics prepared, that's setting us up to fail. And we need to succeed here. So let's get going. What do we need to do to succeed?